Ridgefield Inland Wetlands Board, application IW 2419, 27 Abbott Avenue. Public hearing, August 22, 2024. A public service of the Ridgefield Record.
So this is the second public hearing of the evening, IW 24-19, 27 Abbott Avenue. A plenary ruling application for the construction of 10 residential townhouses with associated drainage and landscaping within the upland review area of wetlands and watercourses. Owner Veton Alimi, applicant Brian Carey. And Caleb will read in.
Yes, so we have
the documents.
We have the site plan, proof of notice by applicant to water company, proof of notice by applicant to the Commissioner of Public Health, wetlands and watercourse delineation, soil report by a soil scientist, drainage report, engineering reports and analyses, and additional drawings to fully describe the proposed project, any filling, excavation, drainage, or hydraulic modifications to watercourses, description of the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses, and the effects of the proposed regulated activities on these communities and wetland functions, description of how the applicant will change, diminish, or enhance the ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses involved in the application and each of the alternatives, and a description of why each alternative considered was deemed neither feasible nor not prudent. Analysis of materials to be deposited within the affected property, measures which mitigate the impact of the proposed activity, a biological evaluation of any marsh, swamp, or bog, or other wetland within the affected property, proof that notices of public hearing were mailed to all property owners within 100 feet of the subject property no less than 10 days prior to the hearing, written narrative of proposed activity, location map, plenary existing conditions site plan, plenary complete set of proposed site plans, plenary erosion and sedimentation control plan, plenary biological narrative of existing conditions and impacts, invasive species control plan dated June 10th, 2024, property deed, OM report dated June 17th, 2024, public hearing instructions, 27 Abbott Avenue, a butter email from town staff, public correspondence, 10 unit plans dated July 11th, 2024, letters to abutters, letter to Inland Wetland Board staff reopening a public hearing, legal notice dated July 11th and 18th, 2024, public correspondence, IWB memorandum dated July 24th, 2024, public hearing instructions, 27 Abbott Avenue, a butters email from town staff dated August 7th, 2024, legal notice dated August 8th, 2024, engineer peer review report dated August 7th, 2024, Steve Trinkus, 27 Abbott Avenue review dated August 16th, 2024, Steve Trinkus resume, legal notice dated August 15th, 2024, Land Tech response to RTEL engineering dated August 16th, 2024, drainage report dated June 13th, 2024, revised August 15th, 2024, site plan dated June 13th, 2024, revised August 15th, 2024, public correspondence dated August 20th, 2024, SLR biological evaluation peer review report dated August 21st, 2024, public correspondence dated August 21st, 2024, petition to intervene, 27 Abbott Avenue dated August 21st, 2024, public correspondence dated August 19th, 2024, visual renderings, 27 Abbott Avenue, and public correspondence dated August 22nd, 2024.
Susan, you're muted.
All right. Yes, we also need once again to vote on whether the intervener should be granted intervener status. We received a letter, I believe, yesterday, which, similar to the previous application, requests that it's from Mr. David Sachs, requests intervener status. I don't know if you all saw that, because it came in rather late. But basically, at this point, we have to basically decide if the alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction of the public trust in air, water, or other natural resources relates to something within the jurisdiction of the board to consider in conjunction with the application. And B, if there are specific facts alleged in the petition to intervene that reasonably connect the proposed conduct by the applicant to the alleged unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction. So, in other words, proposed intervener cannot just make a bald assertion of likely unreasonable pollution, impairment, or destruction without a factual nexus set forth in the verified petition. So we did receive a verified petition. So it is up to us to vote to acknowledge and grant intervention status. So, Jim?
I think the petition by the intervener is valid and thorough, and I would make the motion to grant them intervener status.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Excuse me, I hate to intervene.
Mr.
myself.
Klein?
Yeah, Madam Chair, for the record, Jay Klein, not a member of the board who could vote on anything before you, representative for 27 Abbott Avenue. As you referenced, this petition was filed, and it looks like my camera's not working. I'm sorry, you're not missing anything by not seeing me. But as you mentioned earlier, this petition was filed, I think, a couple of hours ago. I know it's typically this board's policy that any new information, in order for that information to be acted upon, has to be provided the Thursday prior to any meeting. I'm guessing that this hearing will be continued. What I'd ask in light of those facts, that we be provided with the opportunity to present evidence that the intervener has not met their evidentiary burden in the petition that was filed a couple of hours ago. Thank you.
Mr. Klein, I'm not sure that that's something that certainly makes sense to me, because a person may become an intervener even if the allegations ultimately are determined by the board to be without merit. So it seems to me it's up to us to determine whether or not the intervener has merit.
Yes, one of those, one of the standards, as you mentioned, is there a factual basis proven? We believe that they have not shown any evidentiary backing for the allegations in their pleading, which is why we'd ask for the opportunity, really just a typical due process, right, to respond to the allegations there, rather than having you all make a vote on that before we're provided with that opportunity. I don't think the interveners are losing any rights. If this hearing was closing this evening, which again, it's my assumption that it is not closing. And in light of the fact, I know just from our past experience, when materials are provided to you all later than the Thursday before the meeting, that's been frowned upon. I don't know that, or not, I don't know. I know that an exception is not necessary in this instance. I think everyone should be given play by the same rules and the same opportunity.
Anyone on the board, Carson?
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I was gonna, just as Mr. Klein was speaking, I had my hand raised as well. So I don't know whether there's any, I agree, I don't think there's any actual prohibition against us acting tonight. Personally, I have not had a chance to review the materials. So if we took a vote tonight, I would have to abstain on that. But one of the questions related to that I was gonna ask is, I can't recall how we did it the first time. Are we just doing it on the papers, or will the intervener have a chance to present and then the other side have a chance to counter and then we make a decision? Or procedurally, I don't know how you guys want to proceed, but I have not had a chance to review the papers, so I could not make an informed decision tonight myself personally.
Okay, appreciate that. Basically, what the intervener status allows for the intervener to do is make a presentation, yes. And they did so last time. They had hired their own peer reviewers, and those people were allowed to present to us. And other than that, it's a public hearing, so anyone from the public can speak. Anyone want to comment on putting off a vote for a week so that we can study the intervener? Some of us can study the intervener document. Tim, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. If the other board members haven't reviewed it, then obviously that makes sense.
I agree. I think putting it off for a week is not
Well,
for a
yeah,
session
actually,
is
it would be 3 weeks because
3
we
weeks.
are, our next meeting is on September the 12th.
I think it's only fair to both sides that all the information is presented.
Okay. Anyone else? So Tim, do you want to withdraw your motion for the time being?
Yeah, I'll withdraw it, given the fact that the board members have not had the opportunity to review. I did, so therefore I made the motion that there was basis in their claims that was provided. So that being said, I will withdraw until we have that opportunity.
Okay, so this will definitely come up first again next time. And we will proceed from here. So the presentation, who's going to start?
I think I'm happy to pick things up, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your attention to that prior matter. Again, for the record, my name is Jay Klein. I'm an attorney at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, partner in our land use and real estate group here on behalf of the owner of 27 Abbott Avenue, Mr. Veton Alimi, joined by the team of professionals at Land Tech, and my colleague Dan Conan is also here this evening as well. Our colleagues at Land Tech have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and I just asked one of them, Brian or Randy, if you can put the PowerPoint up, as that'll be helpful in my introductory remarks and also as we get into the meat of this project. I think the many of you who are on the board will remember that many of us spent a good chunk of last summer and a portion of last fall together discussing 27 Abbott Avenue. The property is a little under half an acre, as it's coming up here on our screen. Currently improved with a single family residence and located in really nice neighborhood, a nice and developed neighborhood. If we can go to maybe slide number 3, Andy, is a good one to just kind of land on our introduction here. Perfect. You can see our property, if we zoom in a little bit perhaps, is highlighted as that yellow rectangle along Abbott Avenue. What's also identified on this slide that Andy's put together is the offsite wetland area, which brings any or most development of the property to you all this evening. That wetland area has a 100-foot buffer associated with it, and that 100-foot buffer is identified by the purpley pink, as my dog would call it, hashed mark around the area. You see where it captures the naked lawn that's on our project site, but you also see that the significant development that really and nice development that defines much of this area. A lot of that development is within the 100-foot upland review area. We came before you again last year, is about around this time, with a proposal for 14 townhomes on the project site that would maintain a 22-foot buffer from the offsite wetland. Still larger than much of the development in other parts of this neighborhood, but something that you folks and some folks who are no longer on the board took issue with. We had several public hearings together. Members of the public participated in those hearings and a couple evenings of deliberation that ultimately ended in a vote of denial. And in kind of stepping back and figuring out how we can respond, how we could respond.
Excuse me, Mr. Klein, could you speak up a little bit?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry about that. Is this better? Thumbs up? Perfect. Okay. You all denied that application and focused in on the fact that there was a 22-foot buffer between our construction and the wetland. So what we've done and what Andy Sumalides will get into is show you how we have looked to directly respond to that feedback, particularly tripling the buffer or the distance between our proposed project and the offsite wetland. There's a reduction in homes from 14 to 10 that allows us to not just increase the buffer, but really do more to provide a natural and vegetative habitat within that upland review area. So with that, I'll turn things over. I think, Andy, you're next in our batting order, if I'm not mistaken.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Andy Sumalides. I'm a principal and professional engineer with Landtech out of Westport. Also with me this evening is Anthony Zemba, who will touch upon our landscape plan and the wetlands. Just to jump back a little bit, the site is 0.44 acres and it's approved with a single family residence constructed in the 1950s. As some of you were on the previous board, I think all of you, you saw the proposal for a 14-unit townhouse development that has thus been reduced to 10 units, and I'll go through that. The property is serviced by sewer, public sewers and water, natural gas. There's no wetlands or water courses on the site. The regulated area does encompass the eastern portion of the property, but the wetlands are just off to the east of the property boundary. As you heard Attorney Klein mention, the previous buffer was 22 feet and has been increased to more than 75 feet. And then you'll hear more about the ecological and functions of the wetlands. No flood zones on this property. There's no floodway associated with this property. There was a previous approval from the Wetland Board for 3 apartment buildings, which still remains in place. And the site is located in a heavily urbanized area within the Titicus River watershed. Here's just an aerial of the proposal overlaid on an aerial. The purpose of this is to kind of just show the proximity again of some of the surrounding adjacent properties and their proximity to the wetlands and what we're looking to propose this evening. Again, these are the 10 townhouse units with a driveway serviced off of Abbott Avenue. Here in blue, you see the stormwater facilities, this retaining wall, which I'll talk to more in detail as we go through the site plan, and a pretty robust landscaping plan. And this is where we increase that buffer to 75 feet from the wetlands. Again, you can see some of the close proximity to adjacent impervious areas directly adjacent to our property, structures and the such, well within that 100-foot upland review area. Since we had some time between our last hearing and this, what we did want to show you, and again, not really part of your purview, but probably some concerns of the neighbors of what this thing's going to look like, is the aesthetics of this building. The owner of this property is a local builder who does high-end residential construction, and you can see these high-end finishes throughout these renderings and what they will look like. So we just wanted to present some of the renderings. This is the more telling rendering. This again is with, you would be standing with your back to the wetlands on the eastern end of the property, looking back towards Abbott Ave. This is that facade of the rear of the building. This is, you could kind of see peeking through the vegetation, that retaining wall, and that's that driveway and parking area. And this is a direct representation of type of species, location of these species in this rendering, and what that will look like upon completion of this project. Here again, this is standing on Abbott Ave and looking at the back of these back of this building. Again, here's that driveway. This is the front of the building, and this is the back of this building. Just showing another perspective and rendering of what this building would look like if constructed. Here are the existing conditions. Again, this is that one with your back to the wetlands, looking back at Abbott Ave. That's that existing single-family residence that exists today. And you could just see what the existing buffer looks like, and how we plan to enhance it. It's basically overgrown lawn area, providing no real function and value there. Here's just another rendering looking to the north. It's just showing what the existing vegetation looks like. And here's another one looking back towards the wetland. That's that existing shed that's to be removed. And it just kind of shows you the current state of this buffer. So we went back to the drawing board and took the resolution of denial and came back with a plan of how do we address all these comments. The biggest that we heard was buffer, need more buffer. So that's what this plan shows. So here you see this dash line is the 50-foot buffer. This dash line here is a 75-foot buffer. And this dash line is that 100-foot buffer from the wetlands. The previous application had roughly on the entire site 15,600 square feet of impervious area. We have reduced that to 10,800 square feet of impervious area with this proposal. Basically a 5,000 square foot reduction in impervious surfaces, greatly reducing it. The amount of impervious within the 100-foot upland review area under the previous proposal was 5,200 square feet roughly. In this proposal, we're looking at roughly 420 square feet. And that's basically this little bit of, this little bit of parking area that you can see here. This is landscape lawn area above this wall, but you're really looking at the limits of the wall and this little paved area equating to about 420 square feet of impervious now with this new proposal. Also to note, within this 100-foot upland review area, we are proposing 220 cubic yards of fill. Barely over the threshold of your 100 cubic yards of fill, being able to possibly omit a public hearing. So very limited amount of fill required within the upland review area. And that's the biggest basis of the design of the retaining wall, was to really enhance that buffer, maintain that 75-foot, as well as limit the amount of fill required. We did look at options of possibly sloping this down. That would extend some of the wing walls of this retaining wall and also encroach on the disturbance. In terms of the stormwater design, very similar to what you folks saw the first go around. All the roof area, all the impervious area of the driveway, it's all being collected. The driveway is being collected via 2 deep hooded catch basins. Those are then being piped to a manhole, which then go through what's called a hydrodynamic separator. It's a mechanical system, again, removing sediment and ultimately into a 32 Coltex. Those are those plastic chambers surrounded by crushed stone that help promote infiltration. That all overflows and outlets to a level spreader on the downside of that retaining wall, which would then go over 75 feet of vegetated buffer before going into the wetlands. So very similar design in nature in terms of stormwater, but we'll touch upon some more details of that later on. We provided some larger cross sections through this, showing a cross section in both directions through the Coltex system. Again, this is a slab on grade construction here of the townhouse. You have your pavement section, and then you have your your drainage package here. And this is a block wall here, an unreinforced, and I'll show you a detail of that. It's an unreinforced block wall. One of the questions, and I'll go through those in detail also from your third-party engineering review. One of the questions was how sometimes walls are designed with what's called a geogrid. And what happens there is every couple of layers up, you put this fabric back that helps reinforce and kind of tie back the retaining wall for structural support. But they also make designs where you don't need that tie back. And that's what we're proposing, and we clarified that there. Again, we provided soil erosion and sedimentation controls for the duration of construction, a proposed construction sequence. Again, we beefed up that system, double row of silt fence with hay bales, pulling all the disturbance even further away from the wetlands certainly helps minimize any risk of potential failures and going into the wetlands. So one of the big questions always is, what is LID, and can you guys do more LID? Well, we did LID the first go around, and we have LID measures again. So I took this excerpt directly from the 2024 Water Quality Manual of the State of Connecticut. So I'm going to read it verbatim and then show you how we adhere to that. I think everybody thinks LID is just rain gardens and grass swales. Well, it's more than just that. So LID practices is a site design and stormwater management strategy that maintains, mimics, and replicates pre-development hydrology. We do that. All the existing site drains west to east towards the wetlands, and we are draining west to east with our proposal. So we're not drying out a wetland. We're not starving it out from water resource. We're basically taking stormwater, cleaning it, and then sending it back to where it goes, infiltrating it at the source, as close to the source as possible. Through the use of numerous site design principles and small-scale structural stormwater practices. That is what we're proposing. Small-scale structural stormwater practices distributed throughout a site, manage runoff, volume, and water quality at the source. That's exactly what we're doing. LID includes the use of both non-structural site planning and design techniques, which are rain gardens and water quality swales and the such, which are addressed in this chapter, and it says more in that chapter, and the use of distributed small-scale structural stormwater BMPs. And that's exactly what we're proposing here, right? So we're proposing deep-hooded catch basins, which you'll see I did a little bit of treatment training, and I'm going to jump to that slide next. And this is the fundamental objective of the LID. It's a low-impact development, and that's what we're doing here. So here, how does the treatment train work, right? We're capturing it with deep-hooded catch basins and sumps. That provides anywhere from 5 to 10% TSS removal. Then we propose a hydrodynamic separator. That is proven to treat 80% TSS removal. That then goes into an underground chamber, which promotes infiltration, recharging groundwater at the source, which we are proposing. The outlet from that goes through a level lip spreader, another stormwater BMP mentioned in the manual. That level lip spreader then distributes over a 75-foot buffer of native vegetation. So that's the treatment train in a nutshell. And these are all LID stormwater BMPs, explicitly named in the 2024 manual. I think some of the questions were, can you do more LID? Well, we've done a lot of LID. This is a small scale project relative to the 2024 manual as well. Again, we're talking about 1/4 of an acre of impervious area that needs to be treated and infiltrated. Well, the manual, really keys on a lot of large scale as well when you're talking about stormwater wetland ponds and detention ponds. Those are typically for 1 to 5 acre development sites of impervious surfaces. This is a very small scale development relative to the nature of a lot of what's mentioned in that manual. The manual also gives guidance to how big drainage areas can be contributing to each one of these BMPs. And we meet that, how much impervious surfaces go to each one of these. Underground infiltration systems are designed for a single system to handle up to 5 acres. Again, we have a quarter of an acre of impervious surfaces here. Deep hooded catch basins are a quarter of an acre per catch basin. We have 2 of these on our site, capturing just the pavement area, which is approximately 6,600 square feet. So we meet and exceed the manual in terms of drainage areas, the functionality. How are these going to function? Are they really going to remove sediment? We greatly exceed all of the requirements met in the manual and as well as the proprietary systems. And lastly, I'm just going to conclude with, we did receive comments again from Martel, the third-party reviewer. I'd say they were very minimal in substance, but I'll go through them quickly here, and then I'll turn it over to, actually I have one more slide after this, so let me just go through these quickly. The first comment was, this does not meet zoning regs. Yes, we fully understand that. I think everybody here understands it, as well as the public. This is an 830G application, affordable housing application with an 830G housing application. You do not need to meet the local regulations. Comment 2 was in relation to that tieback I mentioned earlier. How is that retaining wall going to be built? Is there proposed geogrid reinforced will be required? No, and we provided a detail showing that. The detail was already on the plan, but we enhanced that cross section to further note that. Due to the close proximity of the drainage system to the wall, there was concern, and I'll jump back to that section, that this infiltration system will bypass and not function properly and would go into this drainage layer behind the wall and not infiltrate properly. We added these impervious liners on the edges of the system, keeping the bottom open to promote infiltration downward, but not outward. So that was the add based on that comment. There was concern about the level lip spreader and bucking grade, basically going against the grade. So what we did was redesign that level spreader so it did stay level, and that can be seen here now. And it's at a constant flat area rather than the concrete curbs protruding up and acting as almost like a mini retaining wall. So this will now be able to sit flush on that existing grade. The storm drainage challenge should include modeling of the outlet control manhole. We've provided that with our revised drainage report that was submitted last week. And then the time of concentration, we took a very conservative approach. Time of concentration basically means you take a raindrop at a corner of a watershed and you analyze it. I'm trying to explain in layman's terms how long it takes to get over that distance, the longest path traveled to get out of that watershed. On paved surfaces, we use a number of T sub C of 5, a time of concentration of 5. That's the fastest rate of droplet of water can go from one end to the other. That's the number that's used, industry standard. So we modeled the whole site as a T sub C 5. So we said even lawn areas are T sub C 5. And that's how we modeled the proposed condition. Under existing conditions, we did not do that, but under proposed conditions, we maxed it out at 5, a T sub C of 5. Again, this is a very small scale project in terms of stormwater detention and stormwater design, that even changing it to T sub C of 5 did not change it did not make our system bigger or change the design. And then a comment number 7 was just a written response, which you're seeing here that we provided back to Artel last week as well with our package. And then I want to quickly just go through the peak flows existing and proposed. Again, the 1, 10, and 5, and I added the 100-year here as well. I'm sure after Sunday's events, people are concerned about flooding and intensity of rainfalls and what's happening out here. And we could talk a little bit more about that. But in essence of time, I just want to show you the industry standard of 1 through 100 here. Existing and proposed, the deduction, the rate of deduction, the percent reduced based on the implementation of the drainage system as proposed. This also provides the necessary water quality volume, and we also did a water quality flow calculation. We went a step further and based on Sunday's events, what's the volume? And this shows the reduction in volume from existing today to what we proposed as part of the implementation of these townhouse construction, the driveway, plus the implementation of the proposed drainage system. This is the reduction from today, if this was built and designed. And again, this is using industry standard models, drainage models. It's called hydrograph, HydroCAD, and these are all in our drainage report, except the 100-year. I added those just for the presentation, just to show what the 100-year does also. I've never shown anything higher than 100-year. So, there's talks about a 1,000-year storm that happened this past Sunday. There's nothing that really is designed for a 1,000-year storm. So I'll now turn it over to Anthony, and he can present, or if you guys have questions at this time, or you want to wait till our final presentation, I'll turn it over to Anthony. You guys let me know.
Anyone have a comment right now, question? Or okay, I don't see any,
We'll
so,
just keep going.
okay, please.
Anthony,
Okay, can everybody hear me?
loud and clear.
Okay, great. Hi, Anthony Zemba. I am a senior ecologist and certified soil scientist with Land Tech, with offices at my office at 518 Riverside Avenue, Westport. So I'm just here tonight to represent about the functions and values and the attributes of the wetland, which is off-site of our property, but adjacent, and is the receptor wetland down gradient from our site. The wetland system, as depicted there, you can see in the wintertime, you see all the trees. It's what's known as blustery forested broadleaf deciduous wetland. It's seasonally saturated with snow melt and spring rains, and then subsequently with heavy rainstorms that produce sheet flow in the surrounding upland areas. And again, from that picture there, you could see in prior pictures, you see that there's a lot of impervious surfaces in the neighborhood in terms of roofs, parking lots, roadways, all of which surrounding that wetland drain to it with very little mitigation of the storm flows and any pollutants that those stormwaters may carry. So under existing conditions, the groundwater recharge and discharge functions are very minimal. Most of our streams in the Northeast are groundwater discharge streams, with a few exceptions. Some streams coming down steep slopes into sand aquifers sometimes become recharge streams. This case, without hydrologic data, it's a good bet that this has probably some groundwater discharge happening here. But again, with a largely impervious watershed, we suspect that most of the water that's conveyed through there was produced by stormwater runoff, and therefore is just passing through. And that becomes significant in a moment when I talk about other functions and values. The system itself doesn't really have a big topographic gradient producing a big basin. So really there's little flood flow alteration in terms of storage capacity within that wetland. What the vegetation does do is probably slow down some of the flows that go through that. But flood flow alteration isn't really a principal function that we identified for that wetland. There are no fish and shellfish in that wetland, so that's not a function that it provides. The sediment toxicant and pathogen retention, we did identify as a principal function, because again, a lot of the stormwater goes unmitigated through leak offs and otherwise directly into that system. And there is a road on the adjacent property, which I think is to the west, that has a leak off right at the end. Yeah, right where that arrow is, that discharges directly into that wetland, as an example. But once that stormwater does enter that wetland, the wetland does probably provide some sediment, toxicant, and pathogen retention due to the vegetation and the organic substrate, which can tie up some of those pollutants. The system does also provide production export because there is an outlet stream that leads down gradient to the east, and eventually the stream discharges to the Titicaca River. It's an unnamed tributary to that drainage. So that organic matter is flowing downstream. There's birds and other animals that visit the wetland and consume food in that wetland and therefore leave the wetland. That's an example of production export as well. So that was identified as a function. The vegetation growing along the stream channel and within the wetland provides sediment and shoreline stabilization, especially with the high storm flows that flow through there. And, you know, the species of plants growing within that wetland provide food and cover for different types of wildlife. So wildlife habitat was identified as a function as well. The wetland does not provide a significant recreational source or have any identified educational or scientific value or uniqueness or heritage. One could probably argue that it does have visual quality and aesthetics. If you're looking out the window of the housing to the south there, they're looking out into a wetland system. So if you like wetlands, you would find value in visual quality. And no threatened or endangered species that we know of based on our inquiry with the National Diversity Database System. Now, with that being said, there were concerns addressed in previous meetings about impacts to wildlife with development in the upland review area. Since that time, as Mr. Somalides had mentioned, we have included a significant planting plan that will provide multiple benefits to a number of taxa of wildlife. We have decreased the footprint of the disturbance within that upland review area. So we feel that we've adequately addressed that concern. There would, again, no direct impact to the wetland. This is all enhancement of the upland review area. Now, the planting plan that we put forth has 24 different species of plants representing different structural layers in the vegetation. We have 3 tree species, 4 shrub species. In the herbaceous layer, we have 17 different species, of which 10 are forbs, 6 are grasses, and 1 fern. You can see how it's all laid out there. You do need to leave room for these trees and shrubs to grow. Okay, so they shouldn't be touching each other on the plan. There should be spaces in the middle. So as these trees continue to grow in development, they have plenty of sunlight to do so. In the next slide, we provide a breakdown of the wildlife value of the different species. The red maple provides leaves for the leaves provide food for caterpillars, which are a vital food source for bird population. Red maples flower early in the spring and offer nectar for pollinators when other nectar sources are not yet present. Seeds are consumed by birds, and it's a host plant to the eastern spring azure butterfly. Similarly, the black gum or tupelo. The flowers support a number of native pollinators, including various bees and flies. About 7 species of birds that could be expected to be found in that neighborhood will regularly consume the fruits of black gum. An additional 12 other species of birds that probably migrate through will also relish those fruits. The fall foliage turns a bright red-orange, and therefore it has a dramatic aesthetic value to the landscape. The black chokeberry provides a source of foods for birds as well. The flowers attract pollinators, and the dense branches offer shelter and nesting cover for small birds. American holly similarly has persistent fruits eaten by a number of birds, and those fruits usually retained on the branch late into the winter, so it becomes a very important food source when few other sources may be available. The dense foliage and evergreen foliage provide shelter and nesting sites for birds, and again, aesthetic value on a winter landscape as the foliage is evergreen. Flowering dogwood that actually is really a small tree as opposed to a shrub. So the oversight on my part. Small tree. It provides fruit, which is eaten by 21 different bird species. The flowers attract pollinators, and the branches can provide cover and concealment for nesting birds and for other wildlife. And it's also a host plant for eastern spring azure butterfly. Sumac produces berries that are critical winter food, food source for birds. They usually don't eat those fruits until everything else is depleted. So it's a real important food source at a time of the year when foraging is critical for the birds. The flowers attract an abundance of pollinators, and the foliage provides nest concealment for nesting songbirds. And also some shelter for small mammals and insects. And in that slide, the actual species of birds are listed that I gleaned from the literature, and I won't read all those to save time. Continuing on, you see this common theme here with all the plants that were selected. Sweet pepper bush, sweet smelling flowers in late summer or midsummer used by various pollinators, the dense foliage used by nesting songbirds, and then so on down the line, the butterfly milkweed, purple coneflower, the asters, and other composites, and even the grasses like the little blue stem, Virginia wild rye, and the big blue stem. These are larval host plants for some of our native butterflies. The hay-scented fern is a deer-resistant plant and provides just more structural diversity to the ground cover, which can provide concealment for ground nesting birds and for small wildlife. And then even species that are in the seed mix, which is on the last slide there. Again, larval host plant to a number of native Lepidoptera, the butterflies and moths. The seeds are eaten by different bird species, and they have pollinator and aesthetic value. So we think we've gone above and beyond the call of enhancing the upland to wildlife habitat value as opposed to existing conditions, and with the added benefit of adding aesthetic value. And by having a number of different vegetation layers. We are providing a substrate for different insectivorous bird species to forage on. We are providing food sources that will sustain a number of different trophic levels of wildlife, and supply a number of different feeding guilds. Granivores, herbivores, frugivores, insectivores will all find value in this array. In terms of the stormwater management, I just wanted to reiterate one thing that Mr. Somalides had said, which is extremely important from an ecological point of view, and that's getting the stormwater back into the ground instead of it just flash flooding right off the site in sheet flow. When that happens, water enters the system unmitigated with velocity and volume. It washes out a lot of the organic matter from the stream channel. The water shunts through quickly, and the stream is just really a flashy conveyance for stormwater. Once that water is put back into the ground through the methodology that Mr. Somalides has explained to you, that water can slowly travel through the surface, subsurface environment, mitigate any sedimentation and pollutants that may be in the stormwater, and slowly bleed back out into the receiving stream, where now the flows become longer sustained and more even, and the value to aquatic organisms has just been greatly enhanced under those conditions. So I think that concludes the material that I wanted to present to you tonight. In summation, this is a significant improvement over existing conditions, where basically you just had a mowed lawn for many years, and then now just sitting there fallow. We are basically accelerating the succession of the site through our planting plan with a multitude of benefits for a number of different taxa of wildlife. That's all I have to say.
Thank you
Unless
very
there's any
much.
questions.
Do you have questions from the board for Mr. Zemba? Tim?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zemba. Appreciate that thorough analysis and description. I think that's, in my opinion, professionally well executed, considering functionality of plant selection and their ecological value. I have a couple questions as it relates to this presentation.
Sure.
One, having not been there since the last application, can you please speak to if this design was executed and implemented, the potential for nearby invasive plant species, if any, and their encroachment into the new restored area, and if there is a management plan for either the proposed plantings or invasives.
Yes, thank you for that question and those comments. Invasive species are always a concern with any system. Here in Connecticut, it's such a small state with high density of human population per square mile. So plenty of sources of invasive propagules out there. So that is a concern for every restoration plan in Connecticut, if not the Northeast in general. And so, yes, we would need to have some type of invasive species control measures that can be incorporated into the contract for the landscaping plan and the groundskeeping people. that will be, trimming hedges and cutting grasses outside the restoration area. That could be a component of their contract. That comment, we received very late comments from SLR, I believe, yesterday, and the need for a management plan, I think, was one of them. So we are in the process of addressing that. So your concern will be addressed in our response there. And I tend to have to agree with you that invasive species management would need to be included in that management plan.
Thank you. To that extent, is there any proposed, just looking at drawing L 1.0, is there anything proposed to exclude residents or I'll say guests out of this area with any signage or split rail fencing? So my fear being that a management vendor could accidentally start weed whacking or mowing or some other type of destruction in this area. Is there anything being proposed at this time?
Yeah, we will, again, like I said, we were working on that management plan right now. We will definitely use in there. I've seen it happen myself, where the groundskeepers have mowed down restoration plantings. So those will have to be clearly marked. Sometimes that's done through deer fencing to allow the plants to get established. Many of the plants that we selected are deer resistant, but that doesn't mean a very desperate deer isn't going to nibble or take a few munches. So there are different alternatives. Signage and fencing can definitely demarcate the area as a restoration area to inform the public. But we'll look at what makes sense for the plantings and for the location and include that in the management plan.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned SLR's comments. It doesn't sound like they've been reviewed yet, but comment C10 called for an increase in woody plants, particularly tree species, to quote them. Is that something at this time, prior to your review, you and your client would consider amending?
We'll take a look at it. Like I said, you want to leave space for things to grow, but because it is a comment put forth, we will take another look at that, and measure the distances again and see what makes sense for the site.
Great, thank you. And my last question is maybe for Mr. Samulis, but you did, I believe, mention it. Is there a square footage number for the reduction in impervious surface from the previous design to the current design?
Yes, it's about 5,000 square feet. So the previous proposal was 15,600. The current proposal is 10,800. It's a little less than 5,000 square foot reduction.
Great, thank you. And for the record, Tim Bishop, also a certified ecologist and wetlands professional. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Anyone else? Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Zember, for your comments regarding the mitigation area. One of the concerns I have too is areas like that are always in need of maintenance. And considering there's a retaining wall on the north, east, and south sides of the parking area with a guide rail sitting on top of it, access is going to be very limited. Is that going to be something which will be addressed as to how a maintenance crew will be able to get into that mitigation area to, for example, remove invasive species, or just be able to address the plant materials which are there? It's just something that I do think needs to be considered as well.
Yeah, that's your comments noted. Thank you. We will take a look at that. I do believe we either have an invasive species management plan submitted already, or we have one in the works. I'll have to double check that. In terms of access, I think if you look at that wall on the west side, the height of the wall is much shorter than on the east side. We can designate an area where the maintenance people can step down into that restoration area for access, so that any work that needs to be done can be done. You know, ecologically speaking, the site doesn't need to look completely kept, right? And so the management activities that I foresee happening are like invasive control, removal of any trash that may have been blown in there from offsite sources, perhaps some pruning, judicious pruning here and there, to encourage proper growth of some of the planted specimens, and such like that. So I don't foresee the need of any heavy equipment needing to access that area. Mostly be done by laborers and handheld implements.
And I understand that, but I'm just saying that there seemed to be very limited access into that area. I wasn't thinking that you have to bring heavy equipment into that mitigation area.
Right. I just wanted to be clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
So we can put, you know, step down. There's room on the west side where the wall is shorter, to provide access for laborers and maintenance crews.
Anything else? Carson?
Thanks, Susan. Carson Finch for the record. Just two comments based on things from the original application. I don't think either of them are too major. That should be relatively easily addressed. The first is, and it's probably a management program, a portion of your management program to make sure that the snow plow piles don't go outside of the drainage system, aren't pushed over the wall into the wetland buffer, which, you know, with the orientation the way it is now, seems like a high probability for someone plowing that, as that's where it would go. So whether there's signage or fencing or a management program that makes sure that doesn't happen, that would be a suggestion or a request, you know, from my end. And the second is, I believe it was a comment from Mr. Trinkus originally in the original application, having to do with the erosion and sedimentation control, particularly the silt fence along the property line. I believe it was on the north side, being parallel and running down grade. Evidenced by this weekend, although this weekend was an unusual event, as we all know. I've seen it in practice now. I hadn't before, where parallel silt fences running down grade act as a great chute for the water and actually magnify the impact and the erosion. So unless you have end controls at the end of that downgrade segment to mitigate that and catch that in a large event, particularly while you're going through construction staging, whatever size event that might be, additional controls I think should be required if you're going to be having downgrade parallel silt fence because of where the property line is oriented.
Anthony Zumba from Land Tech again. Yeah, thank you. Those comments are duly noted. Yeah, I agree with any ENS control line. Typically, you J hook the end, or you have other controls per pen to the line, just for that reason. So we'll take a look again at the plans and make sure that the ENS controls are implemented properly. It all comes down into implementation, right? And making sure that they're installed in the ground properly, that there are no gaps and holes, and that they're configured the way that the design manuals tell you to do that. So thank you for those comments, and we'll make sure that happens.
Just to add to that, Andy Sumalides from Land Tech for the record. Other things we've done on other projects as conditions of approval was recommend a site monitor. that goes and inspects the silt fencing, like a third-party reviewer during construction, and reports back to staff with a report. We've done that on our design projects, and then had a report back throughout construction. Typically after a rain event, we'd have to go out and check and then write a report back to staff. That's something if you guys are open to also, just to put some belts and suspenders on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that recommendation. I'm kind of neutral on it personally, but I appreciate it. I think for me, just the kind of perpendicular end controls on those segments where a flume could be created, it would be nice to see, and that's might just be on the property lines or near the property lines
Sure.
as a catch for those circumstances.
Sure.
Tim?
Thank you. Just to touch on Mr. Sumali's last comment, site monitors are something my department requires in Fairfield on projects of this magnitude. So it is helpful. We receive weekly updates from either PE or CPSEC with experience in S&E controls. So I appreciate that suggestion. But I did just want to go on the record to say, point out some benefits that I'm seeing. It's already on the record that I voted no at the previous application, but want to at least recognize the improvements that I'm seeing thus far in this application. Go around with the reduction of impervious surfaces and building units, increasing the riparian buffer via the upland review area, improve stormwater management techniques, and the use of, on behalf of the town, using SLR as a third-party review on the wetlands and ecological evaluation. So I'm initially feeling more comfortable at this point of the public hearing than I was during the previous round. So just want to go on the record in recognizing the applicant's changes to me are significant. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Any other comments tonight? Yes, I think we'll try to wrap this up for tonight and continue to September 12th. Still outstanding. We will, I think you said you've already sent your comments back to Artel Engineering, so we'll get a response back from them. You're going to look at the just submitted biological review and answer any questions from them. So I think that gets us to a good stopping point for tonight. So we will continue the public hearing to September 12th. At that point, we hope we will also get to the public, and we will all review the intervenor documents and be prepared to vote on that at the next meeting.
Madam Chair, and Jay Klein again for the applicant, that meeting will take place, what is it, Thursday, September 12th, and that'll be at 7 p.m. via Zoom again?
Yes, we're always via Zoom, and
Perfect.
we will, of course, have to continue the other public hearing first, and it is our
Understood.
intention to only have these two public hearings that night. So we'll have just a little bit more time for both of them.
Terrific. Well, thank you all for your time this evening. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you all on September 12th.
Very good. Thank you so
you.
much.
Take care.
Okay.
This is Kirk Carr, on the record. Thank you for watching.